Welcome back to Her Expat Life. We are the YouTube channel that is dedicated to helping you advance your global lifestyle. So, our mission is quite simple. We aspire to advance and empower the lives of women who live and work abroad. We're a global mobility firm that provides services to female expats and digital nomads who are entrepreneurs, creatives, professionals, and investors who desire to advance their global lifestyle, network, and portfolio. With more and more women living, loving, working, and playing abroad, we have created a unique menu of services tailored to the community we serve. And you can visit herexpatlife.com to get a comprehensive understanding of all the ways we can help you with this. Today, we are very excited to speak to our newest team member, who is our new career coach. So, as part of Her Expat Life, we can help you with career coaching to find the remote jobs, to find a whole new career path, to advance your global lifestyle. And our latest team member is Jessica Mckasson, who is going to be doing this with us. So, a few years ago, Jessica realized that it was time for her to walk away from her corporate job and fully dedicate herself to her mission of empowering and supporting women in their healing journeys. She also sold her house, everything she owned, and moved to Central America. Fast forward to now, and she's been living outside of the US and is fully immersed in all things menstrual cycle syncing, feminine empowerment, and for her expat life, career coaching. Jessica, thank you for joining us today and welcome to our team.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So, basically, for our audience listening at home, we want you to understand a little bit more about Jessica's journey. It's very, very inspiring. And also to give you a sense of how she could help you also create a wonderful international life through career guidance and all the other things that she offers. So, let's dive straight into it. First of all, you've had quite an interesting journey, and we are so excited to have you join us as a career coach to help our community. Please tell us about your journey from working at a Fortune 500 company to finding your purpose helping women from around the world.
Okay. So, for most of my professional career, I worked for a large Fortune 500 multi-billion dollar company in the United States. So, when I was working with them, I held leadership positions myself. And then I did a lot of work around coaching, leadership development, career development, and professional development. And basically, it was kind of through this that I started to hone in on what my passion truly is, which is really empowering people, helping people understand like what their gifts are, what they're passionate about, and how they can really live robust, fulfilling lives. And so there came a point when I started to realize that, what I was doing professionally for my company, there was a lot of crossover because oftentimes when I was working with people at a professional level, you can't really isolate professionally without really talking about personal passions and things. So I found that through these conversations and coachings that I was doing, I was just being really drawn to more of the personal development and helping people expand themselves outside of just professionally within one company. And at this time, though, I wasn't really ready to walk away from my career or, make any huge moves. And so, but I was really interested in just becoming a better coach and learning, how I could best serve the people that I was working with. And so that's when I got my first coaching certification. And at the time, it was just to kind of learn more and grow on my own. But then as time progressed, I started realizing that I really wanted to be doing coaching full time beyond the scope of just what I could do, within my company. And so that's when I made the terrifying decision at the time to walk away from my corporate job and start my own business. And it was at that time as well that I knew that I actually wanted to live outside of the US. And I wanted to be able to travel and lead more of a global lifestyle. Traveling has always been a passion of mine. And so my company that I worked for at the time also, because of security issues, I was unable to take my computer outside of the United States. So that was kind of also this factor at play where I felt like the universe was just kind of nudging me in this other direction. And so I left my corporate company. Like you said, I moved to Central America. Now my partner and I are currently currently living in Spain, which is where we are planting our roots and making our home base. But yeah, I've been running my own business as a coach, a women's empowerment coach for the past couple of years and living and traveling abroad, and it's been incredible.
What a journey. What a journey. Let's dive a little bit into the career coaching aspect of things. So,
Yeah.
the term dream job can be subjective, right? So,
Mhm.
how do you help women define their ideal job beyond just title and salary, considering factors like work life balance and fulfillment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, we can absolutely live a life where work doesn't feel like work. And I think that when I think of the term dream job, that's kind of what comes to mind for me is doing something where you're at work, but you're being fulfilled and it's coming from a place of passion and excitement. And so I think that whenever I'm working with anyone around this bigger question of purpose, because I think that's a question that so many of us have, whether it's professionally or personally, I think that our purpose comes down to really what brings us joy and fulfillment and what fuels our passion. And I think that when we follow what truly fulfills us at a deeper level, at a soul level, that's when we end up in jobs that quote unquote become the dream job because we've co-created this experience where we're following something that truly ignites us. And when we're ignited and passionate, this is when we show up as our best self, our most authentic self. This is when opportunities land in our lap. We become absolutely magnetic, right? And so this is when that crossover happens between I'm going to work for a salary and a paycheck, and I'm just like, in the machine of working versus I'm going to do something that's truly fulfilling me.
Okay, so let's look a little bit about self assessment tools. So, what specific assessments or exercises do you use to help women gain self awareness and identify potential career paths that align with this purpose that you've discussed?
Oh my gosh, I love using assessment tools. I think they're so powerful. So, I love using tools like the Myers-Briggs assessment tool. This is kind of more understanding like your inherent personality traits. The Clifton Strengths Assessment, this helps you understand like what your strengths are and like kind of what you can bring to the table. But on a deeper level and kind of more holistically, I love using tools like human design and astrology actually, because I think that we all have these really unique blueprints coded within us as to what our natural gifts and strengths are. And using some of these assessment tools can be so incredibly powerful because sometimes I feel like it's almost as if you're meeting yourself for the first time when you take these assessments, because it's like we know these things about ourselves, but maybe we don't recognize something as a strength. And then when you take some of these assessment tools, where all of a sudden you're presented with this information and it's presented in a way as this is a strength of yours, it's almost like these light bulb moments kind of happen and you start to realize, oh wow, yeah, I do actually love this, or this is something I'm really good at. And the assessment tools are amazing as well because they do point out areas of opportunity and kind of help point out like some blind spots or let you know if you pursue this path, this is likely going to lead to you maybe not feeling fulfilled or not ending up, on a path that is going to feel really good for you.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people talking about human design. It seems to be a thing that's really getting its moment in the spotlight. So I
Yeah,
definitely think we might need to do a bit of a deep dive into that
it's
in the
super
future.
fascinating.
Yeah. For our audience listening at home, if you have any self-assessment tools that you use or any that you're curious about, please jump into the comments section and let us know. Let's see what people are using to get a deeper insight into themselves. My third question for you is about networking. So, we all know how important networking is for a career advancement. So, what strategies do you suggest for women to build and leverage a strong professional network, especially considering potential gender bias and females who may do remote work, which might make it a bit more complicated?
Yeah. I think that when we're talking about networking, it kind of depends on where you're at in your career. So, for example, if you are more wanting to say you're working for a company and you're wanting to advance within the company, then you would basically want to focus a lot on internal networking within your own company versus if you're looking to maybe pivot careers or look for a job at another company, then you're going to be focused more on like external networking. So, from an internal networking perspective, I always encourage women to, do things like seek out a professional mentor, someone that is maybe outside of your direct business organization, but someone that can kind of help enhance your perspective or your skill set in another area of the business. Getting involved as much as you can in networking events that your company offers. A lot of companies nowadays have employee resource groups, where they're focusing on things like diversity and inclusion and other forms of networking groups. And so I encourage people to just be very active and engaged in those. And then for external networking, getting yourself involved in different online communities. So whether that's really using things like, LinkedIn to your advantage, there's many different websites and online resources like that have communities specifically for women who are looking to expand their careers. Joining Facebook groups for women, women who are in your industry or the industry that maybe you want to move into, and just really utilizing, there's so many resources out there, but I just, the more, so much of, I think, moving into a different position or securing an additional position oftentimes comes down to who you know. And relationship building is just such a huge part of any kind of career development. And I also really encourage women to think outside of the box when you're networking. So don't just think of people in your immediate circle or people that you're comfortable with, but really challenge yourself to step outside of the box and be proactive, reach out to people. I will never forget when I was working at my last company, and I reached out to a director who was like 3 levels above me and like in a different organization. And a lot of people said I was kind of crazy for doing this. They were like, Jess, why are you reaching out and doing this? And I just was like, well, I'm curious about what he does. I want to learn more about this. I want to expand my network. And he said yes. And later on, he ended up telling me, he was like, woman, you have some balls. He was like, I have never had anyone just reach out to me and ask, but he was so impressed that I had the gumption to reach out and ask him. And he said, people don't do that oftentimes because they assume the answer is going to be no. They assume that people won't have the time. But oftentimes, people love sharing their experience and people understand the power of networking. And so oftentimes people will say yes. So I always say, shoot your shot, ask. And the worst thing that can happen is someone says no, they don't have the time or the availability, but at least you've put yourself out there and now you've established yourself as someone who is willing to kind of step outside of your comfort zone to do something. So even just doing that alone sets you apart.
And I think people will be surprised how willing others are to help you. Like
Yeah.
many times I've reached out to people thinking, oh, there's not a chance. This person's so busy, or,
Yeah.
like I'm just a small fish in a big pond. Like, what are they going to want to
Yeah.
speak to me for? But
Right.
honestly, it's almost like 95% of the time someone will take the time and the effort to speak to you. Or if you're trying to enter a new industry and you tell people, they're passionate about what they do and they want to share that,
Yes.
especially amongst females. We are really good at building a sense of community a lot of times. So I completely agree. People just need to
Yeah.
just try. You never know until you try. That's what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know until you try. Exactly.
And as you were talking about the different platforms, I just thought it was a good time to remind our audience that we have recently launched an app which you can find on Google Play Store and in all the different places where you can find apps. And it's Her Expat Life, and it's a great resource to try and build community. So whether you're looking to make friends with other females abroad, it's a platform for females, by females, for females. So please, gentlemen, it's not a dating app, but it is for women trying to build connections with other females, women who are trying to build connections with other females who are also living a global lifestyle. And there are a lot of women on there who are building work connections. So please, if you're listening to this and you feel like, I don't know how to network, I don't know how to start building this international community, Expat Life's app is a great, great, great place to start.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about resumes, yeah? Because crafting a compelling resume is sometimes not the easiest thing. So they are often the first impression for potential employers. So, how do you help women tailor their resumes to highlight their unique strengths and experiences relevant to specific jobs? Also, considering how AI is currently being used in the recruitment process.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, from a very base, like foundational level, the formatting of a resume is actually incredibly important now. So, thinking almost less is more because most companies are using an ATS system where the resumes are automatically going through and picking out keywords in the resumes. On top of that, there are studies that are showing that recruiters, when they're looking at resumes, they're spending an average of 6 to 13 seconds looking at a resume. And so you really want that resume to be eye-catching, simple, and to the point. If there's too much going on, it can seem very overwhelming. So there's a lot that we can do just from a very simple formatting standpoint of kind of resume makeovers, cleaning them up, making them visually appealing. But the other big component is really tailoring every resume for the job that you're applying to. So the days of just sending out a resume that you've created once to companies those days are in the rear view. So I think it's really important that if you're going to be applying for a job, that you spend a lot of time really looking at, the key skills that company is looking for and tailoring your resume so that it's including keywords, so that you're ensuring that if you have those skill sets, so those are highlighted on your resume. And even when you're looking at your portfolio, essentially shifting the focus from your duties or responsibilities, but really focusing on achievements. So what you have accomplished. So not just saying, I led a sales team from this year to this year, but okay, so you led a sales team. Well, that sales team could have done horrible. So you want to make sure your resume is very specific in terms of, you led a sales team when you came on, the team was at X level of performance and you brought the team to X level or, whatever it is, but really giving those more tangible achievements because more and more companies are looking for almost like evidence that you can do your job, that you have the proof is in the pudding. And so the more achievement based your resume is and the more specific it is in terms of, measurable results, the better off you're going to be. And you don't need to list, 20 different things. You want to think big picture, look at the job that you're applying for, look at the key things that they're looking for, and then take your own experience and pare it down or shift it, with your strongest points and the points that are going to match that specific company.
I think that's really good advice because I do believe I remember starting off and just like what you would do is you'd create one and you just send it everywhere to every. And honestly, now it's a lot more competitive, especially if we're talking about remote work, because it's not just you competing with people in your town, your city, your country. It's you're competing on a global level. So you do really need to stand out from the crowd. And I think that's really great advice. Like talk about the things you achieved, the shining moments in your career. Like let that be the star.
Another thing that I do want to add from the resume front that's kind of a newer trend is also including a video resume. So a lot of companies are actually asking for you to provide like a 2 to 3 minute video talking about yourself, why you'd be a great fit for the role. And so this is something that I am now just encouraging anyone who's on the job hunt to just be proactive and create this, because then you have it ready to go. And if the company doesn't ask for it, you can oftentimes, still attach videos. You can send it. It's a good excuse to also follow up with a hiring manager after you've applied, because then you can say, hey, I've applied for this. And also here's a video that I've created to give you a little bit better of a picture as to who I am as a candidate for this position. And then your personality comes through. You're no longer just a piece of paper. And so this is another thing that, I love to help women create and work on, is crafting these videos that really showcase who they are and their personality, so that shines and they have that all ready to go.
That's a great tip. Very interesting. I like that. Okay, that's really, really good. Okay, spoken a bit about completing the resume, creating this new resume. So let's move on to the job interviews, because this is where some people shine and then where sometimes where nerves and anxiety override people. Yeah. So what interview preparation techniques do you teach women to increase their confidence and showcase their abilities effectively?
Yeah, I think, one of the most important things is, of course, really knowing the company that you're applying for. Like, really spend time doing research, reading everything you can about the company, learning about the hiring manager. There's so much information online now that's really at our disposal. And so I feel if you're not utilizing all of the information, because the company is providing it, they're telling you who they are as a company. They're telling you what they do. They're telling you what their mission is. And so using all of this information and getting really well versed in that, so that way when you go into the interview, you can ask good questions and you can showcase your working knowledge, and that you've taken the time and energy to invest in actually learning about the company, not just the job itself. I will preach this all day, every day, but mock interviews are just, I think, one of the most helpful tools when preparing for an interview. I know that role playing can be extremely awkward and uncomfortable, but it is so incredibly helpful to have someone that can help you do a mock interview. And then with that, when you're preparing for that interview and like the mock interview, I love to encourage women to use the STAR format. So this is a pretty well-known format, interviewing format. But basically, when you're formulating your answers, you want to include the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So, you know that you're going to be asked questions like, tell me about a time when you ... And so the more prepared you are to answer these questions very specifically, because ultimately what they're looking for is the result. Like, they want to know what happened. And if you kind of just go into it talking about the situation or the action that you took and you don't have that tangible result, it's not really going to get the point across that you're wanting to get across. And likely, if you're talking about it, there was a result that, you can really use to your advantage. So utilizing this STAR format when preparing for the interview, it also helps you get really clear on what you did, what the action you took was, what the result was, so that when you're in the interview, you avoid the pauses, the not knowing what to say. And so that's one of the biggest things you can do to prepare for the interview. And then doing that when you're in the mock interview. So letting, if you have a friend or a career coach or someone that's helping you through that process, and if they have those examples in front of them, then they can kind of look and reference and give you feedback and say, hey, you didn't bring that one home because you forgot this portion of it or something. And so it really just kind of helps flesh out the nerves, because the more, and you don't want anything to come across rehearsed, of course, you want it to be natural, but it just really helps with the confidence piece, because you know what you're going in to talk about.
I think that's great advice. Yeah. And it's not that you're going to like write a script and learn it word for word. It's more that
Right.
you have an idea of how you would navigate the question, more so than being too over prepared for it as well.
Exactly.
Okay, Jessica. So imagine we're thinking about a hypothetical person who's done the job interview and things go well, and now they're moving on to the second or third round, where normally people start talking about compensation, salary expectations. And a common thing that happens here is women often undervalue themselves.
Yeah.
So, how do we empower women to confidently negotiate fair compensation during the job offer stage?
Yeah, I love this question because women absolutely undervalue themselves. And, it's unfortunately still kind of an industry standard that women are only getting paid for about 80 cents to the dollar for every dollar a man makes. And so I think it's really important for women, especially now, to recognize that from a collective perspective, like we are bringing up these conversations and negotiating our salary, we're actually making global change for women around the world, And so I love even just thinking about it in that context is it's so much bigger than just me or you or any woman applying for a job. It's like when we stand up for ourselves and negotiate our salaries because we are worth it, it's incredibly empowering. But then we're starting to shift this for women everywhere. So I love just thinking about that. But from kind of a more tactical perspective, again, just understanding the markets that you are applying, where you're applying, geographic location, so for example, if you're applying for a remote position and maybe you live in Seattle, but the remote position is based in Kentucky, the geographic salary range in Kentucky is going to be very different than the geographic salary range in Seattle. And so having a working knowledge as to what the actual ranges are that are representative for where the company is based at, I think is really important. Using resources like Glassdoor, for example, there's a lot of companies where you can, go online and actually look and see kind of what average salaries are. So you have some working knowledge. And then lastly, hiring managers actually expect negotiation. Most hiring managers don't think that the first offer is going to be the offer that sticks. They're prepared for it. Any recruiter or hiring manager will tell you that they have a range in which they can hire within. And so, because they're just like any negotiation tactic, right? It doesn't matter what industry you're in or what you're negotiating with, you're prepared. You know that you have some wiggle room. And so I always encourage women, whatever that first offer is, you can be excited about that, and if you feel that maybe it's low, or even if you just would like to ask for more because you do know, your worth and your achievements, that absolutely come back and say, hey, I'm really excited about this offer. Thank you so much. One, you could ask, can I get back to you by the end of the day or tomorrow, to give yourself some time to do a little research if you haven't already done so. Or just say, I'm really excited about this, but I was really hoping for, a salary that was more in the ballpark range of, state what it is, and then just say, do you have some room to work with me on this? Then you're opening up the conversation for that negotiation, which they're already expecting anyways. And so I think that if you don't take an opportunity to negotiate salary, you're potentially leaving thousands of dollars on the table.
Yeah, and at least in my personal experience and the women I've spoken to, it's a lot more difficult once you've been hired, like a year in, 2 years
Yes.
in, 3 years
Yeah.
in, to be like, oh, by the way, I realized actually you should have been paying me more since day one. It's a lot harder to have that conversation then.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the precedent has been set of like, well, we know you accept less than you're worth. So I think it's really important, that initial conversation about it, because it kind of also sets the tone for future conversations about
Yeah.
compensation increases. Yeah, it's just, I
Absolutely.
think we need to get firmer with that as females.
Mhm.
Like you said, they expect the negotiation, so we shouldn't be shy to have that conversation.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I always say you have to think like a man sometimes, and just ask yourself, if it was a male counterpart that was going into that conversation, would they have any qualms about asking for more money? And the chances are that the answer to that is no, And so thinking about it in terms of, if somebody else is going to do it, then of course I should be doing it.
This leads well into the next question, which is all about imposter syndrome. So many women experience self-doubt in the workplace. And how can we help women overcome imposter syndrome? What are some suggestions from your end?
Oh, imposter syndrome. I I mean, I think imposter syndrome is something that every single human on this planet experiences. And if they tell you otherwise, they're probably not being 100% truthful with you, because I've spoken to people at all levels of leadership, and every single one of them has said that they have experienced imposter syndrome, at some point in their career. So, first, I think just normalizing it, like acknowledging the fact that it's normal and we're all going to experience it at some point. It's not like if you're experiencing imposter syndrome, you are not the only one. So I think, most important, just acknowledging it and saying, hey, okay, I have this imposter syndrome going on. And then from there, I think it's important to just really like self-reflect and take a look at your negative self-talk, for example. Take a look at any limiting beliefs or stories that you have created that are leading to that imposter syndrome. Because oftentimes we have imposter syndrome and it's completely unjustified. And we have created these stories in our minds that we're not good enough, or we don't have the skills, or we're not worthy, or whatever it may be. And especially women, I think we're so much harder on ourselves and we judge ourselves so much. So sometimes you have to take a step back and actually say, like, okay, I'm feeling these things. Is there actual merit to this? Or have I just created this whole narrative out of nowhere, And then sometimes that imposter syndrome does exist because maybe you are going for a position or you are doing something that maybe you're quote unquote not technically qualified for. I remember there was a time in my own career where I was going for a position that technically on paper I kind of had no business applying for. And so I acknowledged my imposter syndrome and acknowledged my doubts and my fears, but recognized that this was something that I really wanted and truly felt that I would be good at. And then you kind of have to get a little bit delusional, you kind of have to say to yourself, okay, if I'm going to go for this and I'm going to show up for this, I have to set this imposter syndrome aside and kind of almost develop this delusional self-belief and self-confidence and, take your self-talk to the other end of the spectrum where you're really pumping yourself up, like you become your own cheerleader and your own advocate.
Yeah. I think it's also important for people then to have like a tangible plan per se. So, okay, maybe I'm feeling this way because I don't feel like I have XYZ skill set, right? Well, you can take a short course. You can
Yes.
go online. You can teach yourself anything at this point on the internet. So
Yes.
if you're feeling this identification of like, I have this imposter syndrome because I'm aware of where I might be lacking a certain skill set, I think taking some physical steps, some actionable ways to empower yourself might help, because sometimes you think that you don't know something until you look at it and you're like, actually, I kind of already knew that. I just almost
Yeah.
needed the affirmation of, oh, okay, so you do know how to do this thing, so I think
Yes.
that can help as well.
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm so glad you brought that up, actually, because that was something I'd wanted to talk about with the imposter syndrome and forgot about. So thank you so much for bringing that up. But yeah, I think that knowledge is power and knowledge is empowerment. And so 100%, the more you can enhance your skills or bridge the knowledge gaps, the more that's just naturally going to help with that imposter syndrome, because you're actually taking steps and doing something, to help you in whatever area it is that maybe you feel like you don't really know enough about, and so then you can say, well, actually, I'm doing something about it. I'm taking these actionable steps to make sure that I do know. So that's a great point.
Okay, next topic that I want to talk about is work-life balance, because this is quite difficult in this day and age, especially since people are working from home all the time. I hear people saying, I'm actually working more now that
Yeah.
I'm working from home than I was before, because I'm already at home, my laptop's open, I hear an email come in, and then I'm just all of a sudden back at the place that at my desk looking at it, and people are struggling to really have a little bit of a balance, even more so women who have families and personal responsibilities.
Yeah.
So, how can we set these boundaries to achieve work-life balance?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I mean, boundaries right there. I mean, you have to you have to have preset boundaries for yourself. You have to have the hard stops or the triggers or the things that almost force you to have those checks and balances. So, an example, I will never forget this example. So, at my last company, our CEO was a female. She was an incredible woman. And I was at an event with her, and she shared a story about when she was actually in the process of interviewing for the CEO position and was basically in the final stages. Well, a boundary that she had set for herself was that no matter what, she had a son, he was in high school, he played football, and a boundary, a hard stop that she had set for herself was that no matter what was going on at work, she would never miss a game, no matter what was happening. And she made that verbal commitment to her son. She made that verbal commitment to her husband. She made that commitment to herself because, kind of going back to, you have to have the triggers or the people to help hold you accountable oftentimes. And she had set this as a boundary for herself. And so what ended up happening was there was some part of the interview process for the position that coincided with her son's national championship football game.
Wow.
And she quite literally told the interview panel that she could not make the interview at that time because she had promised her son she was going to his football game and she was going to be in those stands. And of course, they worked with her. They moved the interview. She ended up becoming the CEO of our company. But that always stuck with me because I thought to myself, you know what? If a CEO, a woman who is at that high level, is setting those kinds of boundaries, it also kind of comes back to this whole knowing your worth. We have to hold firm to those if we do want to have that work-life balance and be able to do the things that we love and spend the time with our families. And, on top of that, as women, it is so incredibly important that we are filling our own cups and that we're taking time to rest and recharge because, you had mentioned in the beginning, I work with women around menstrual cycle syncing. And this is something that I talk to women about a lot when it comes to career, is that as women, we are hormonal beings, which means that we're going through major hormonal fluctuations during the entire month, which means there are times when our energy levels are going to be lower. And we have to really take time to honor our bodies and take that time for us to rest and recharge. Because if we don't, that's what we end up, burnt out and completely fatigued. And then we're showing up as a shell with our family, a shell with our work, our shell in all of these areas, versus if we just set boundaries and set those hard stops and hold ourselves accountable and give ourselves the time, then we can refuel, recharge, and we can show up with more energy, with more passion. We can be more productive if we learn to work with that versus forcing ourselves to just go, being on your laptop at 10 o'clock at night because you're thinking, oh, well, just 20 more minutes, instead of saying, no, I'm not going to be productive right now anyways. This can wait till tomorrow. Yeah.
It kind of leads a little bit into working smarter, not harder. Yeah, because
Absolutely.
you can work super, super hard, but you're gonna hit a burnout, and no one is an asset to their company when they're so completely fatigued that they're just not even able to show up. So yeah, I think I completely agree. I think boundaries are super important. And yeah, thank you for sharing that insight because you're right. If a CEO, a female who's probably feeling an immense amount of pressure to show up, to lead, to probably almost seem invincible, like
Right.
superhuman, never fatigued, never have any other things going on in life. If she could be clear
Yeah.
to be, no, this is
Yeah.
important to me, I think, yeah, that's
Exactly.
just, it shows everybody can kind of do that.
Yeah. And I think too, even, having proactive conversations with people on your team or your managers, with remote work more and more, there's much more flexibility. People have more flexibility than we used to have. But, sitting down and talking to your manager and saying, hey, it's really important to me that at, 2 p.m. on Tuesdays, I'm at my kids' whatnot. Or, after this point in time, my cell phone's turning off and and setting those expectations and setting those boundaries, because you have a right to do that. We all have a right to do that, And also, even it's interesting because sometimes we have to be aware of the precedent that we're setting, right? So, for example, if you're working at home and it's 9 p.m. at night and you're sending an email to someone at 9 p.m. at night, you're almost setting a precedent that you're working at 9 p.m. at night. So if somebody else, you're available. And so let's say someone else is responding or sending you something outside of working hours, there can be this thought of, well, she was available then, so why isn't she available now? Or she should be available now, versus setting this precedence of, these are my working hours and I won't be available after that. It can wait until tomorrow, and that's okay. And that's what we should be doing.
100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about continuous learning. So it's always been important to upskill yourself and keep up with industry standards and developments. But since the advancements of AI is happening so rapidly, it almost feels like you're learning a skill set now and then 2 days later, you need to be learning something else, which I think is giving a lot of people anxiety in the workplace. So since skills are becoming outdated quite quickly now, how do we encourage women to embrace continuous learning and adapt their skill set to stay competitive in the job market?
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to, in some ways, what we were talking about in the beginning around following your passion, and taking on learning and development coming from a standpoint of, this is personal growth and expansion for myself, because then the motive is very much different versus I'm just trying to check a box and I'm frantically trying to course correct and like chase these different things, versus taking a step back and asking, like, what's something that I'm genuinely curious about learning about, within my field that I think would actually benefit me, and then kind of following that path. And like you said, there's so many great online resources. There's a course for almost anything you could possibly imagine online now. And also, I mean, reading is incredible. I'm a big reader. So I'm a big fan of, seeking out authors or people in your field who have written books, anything that's going to just really kind of expand yourself from a place of genuine curiosity, I personally think is better than doing something just to check a box. Because I think that's where it leads to that anxiety factor of feeling like you're always having to chase something and the tides are always turning, versus knowing that you're doing something because you're investing in yourself and you're investing in your career, and, trusting that.
Okay, Jess, so I have an interesting question for you, and it's about social media. So social media can be a powerful tool, but you always hear kind of mixed feelings about, should you be mixing social media, personal life, professional life? Should you have separate accounts? What should be in a public space? What should be hidden behind privacy walls? So can you just take us through a little bit of a guideline? How can we incorporate social media into advancing our careers, and what are some safeguards that we should maybe have in place?
Yeah, I mean, social media is an incredibly powerful tool for networking, for establishing community. So I'm a huge fan of social media. I don't really think that you can kind of play in the arena anymore if, to some extent, you're not on social media, because you can use it so much to your advantage. For example, you can, if you're on LinkedIn, you can engage so much by sharing, interesting content. So maybe trying to seek out and find different articles that are really interesting that you can share, that is going to help you engage, or engaging with other people's content is really huge. Asking questions, because going back to the networking piece, it's a huge part of networking. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I have connected with through social media that have ended up being a pretty profound connection, just simply through kind of consistently engaging in someone else's content. But that being said, of course, you do have to be careful in terms of, what you're posting and what you're sharing. And I mean, you can always just ask yourself, like, if I'm posting or sharing this, is this something that I would be comfortable with a colleague seeing? Or is this something I'd
Yeah.
be comfortable with a future employee seeing? And, something nowadays, things aren't really deletable like they used to be. If you share something on the internet, even if you delete it, it doesn't really go away. And
Yeah.
so, I've seen people, for women, for example. I just came across a woman the other day, and she actually is a pretty high level employee for the government. And on her personal page, on her Instagram, she specifically at the top says, like, the opinions and things shared here are not shared by my employer. So, if you're going to have a page that you are sharing more personal information, or maybe sharing points of view on political issues, or, anything that's happening, like, I loved that she did that, because I was like, oh,
Mm.
this is amazing. She's very clearly stating that what she is saying in no way reflects her
Yeah.
employer or her employer's point of view. So I think that's a great safeguard. Of course, you can always opt to have your accounts set to private, but anything that you're posting and sharing publicly, you have to think that an employer or someone is going to Google you. Just as
Mm.
if you're looking to apply for a company, you're going to Google them, they're going to Google you,
Yeah.
And so, and I always encourage women to show up authentically, be your authentic self, share what feels good, but
Hmm.
knowing that depending on what it is that you're sharing, that may or may not impact things professionally. But again, I think that the power of social media is so incredible, and that it is a really, really incredible tool for networking and just building community,
Hmm.
especially when you are in the global work world where you're traveling around the world, like that Her Expat Life Facebook group. Like, it's an amazing place for women to engage and
Yeah.
ask questions and support each other, because sometimes this journey can feel really lonely and you kind of feel like you're all by yourself and you're floundering. And so to be a part of these communities, not even at a professional level, but at a personal level,
Mm.
can also be so just comforting. And also, you never know who you're going to meet. You never know who you're going to connect with. So I think it's an amazing tool
Hmm.
to leverage, but, definitely taking some of those safeguards, like maybe very clearly stating this is a personal page,
Yeah.
putting yourself on private, just asking yourself the bigger question, like, if I share this, knowing that
Yeah.
I'm putting this out into the world and it can't be deleted, how will I feel about this later? Or if
Yeah.
someone this, what is the perception going to be as a result of this content?
Okay, so outside of the career coaching that you do for Her Expat Life, you do lots of interesting things. So, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the other offerings that you have?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking. So, I am a menstrual cycle syncing coach. And so, if you're unfamiliar with the menstrual cycle, basically, if you're a woman and you have a period, it means that you have a menstrual cycle. And as women, we go through 4 different phases of our menstrual cycle every month that are governed by different hormonal shifts that impact every single aspect of our lives: our energy, our emotions, our appetite, our libido, our weight, everything. And so I work with women in helping them understand their menstrual cycles, understanding their hormonal shifts, and then really helping women optimize their lives based around working in harmony with their menstrual cycle. So, learning how to work out, how to incorporate better nutrition, how to set boundaries at work, how to have your cycle work for you instead of against you. Because as women, we have this cycle that's happening in us, whether we like it or not. And so we can either use this to our advantage and use it to help us optimize and essentially kind of biohack our lives, or we can try to ignore it, but then we end up exhausted and burnt out and having hormonal health issues. And it's just so fascinating. There's so much that we can learn about ourselves through our cycles, so much self-love, compassion for ourselves, because I think as women, sometimes we expect ourselves to be going all the time and on all the time, when the
Mm-hmm.
reality is, our hormones and our bodies are actually not designed for that. So as women, when we start understanding that, it helps us start to embrace just who we are as women and learning how to work with our unique blueprint so that we can live our best lives all the time. So I have lots of free resources on my website. I have ebooks and journals I am also available for one-on-one coaching around that. And then just in general, feminine empowerment. A lot of kind of what we were talking about today, helping women really connect back to their feminine energy as a superpower, understanding how to listen to their intuition, allowing their intuition to help guide them in life and find their purpose and find their passion and find their joy.
Jess, thank you so much for chatting with us today. We are so excited to have you as part of the team.
Thank you.
I cannot wait to see all the amazing work you're going to be doing with our community. And on that note, if you want Jess to help you with career coaching, please reach out to our team. You can visit our website, herexpatlife.com, or you can drop us an email at info@herexpatlife.com, and we can set up a consultation between you and Jess. She can guide you through the whole journey. If you are stuck in a rut, if you're wanting change, if you're entering the workspace, you're making a career change, if you're trying to figure out how to do remote work and don't really know where to go or what to do, Jess is there. Our team is there to guide you. So please make sure to visit herexpatlife.com and get more information on that. Make sure to follow us on social media. We're on Instagram. We have a wonderful Facebook community. We're on TikTok. You can definitely subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, download our app. It is for women, by women, to help build community. And yeah, Jess, thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun being here. I can't wait to get started and to work with all of the amazing women who are already out there waiting for us.
So excited. And thank you for listening at home. Make sure to drop any questions or comments in the comments section. And if there's anything you'd like to know, any topic ideas, things you'd like us to cover on this channel to help you, make sure to let us know. Until next time, thanks.